Greetings, folks. This is Brian Harris with the Independent Black Voters on Facebook. We continue our series of Know Your Candidates. As a nonpartisan, we believe that it is important to hear all sides of the issues and then determine which issues and which people meet the needs of our community. Today, I'm happy to have Anthony Palmer, who goes by Tony, who is running for State Assembly number 7. Anthony, thank you for coming on to the Independent Black Voters.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Okay, so let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us why you are running for State Assembly.
Okay, well, a little bit about myself. I primarily grew up in New York City till I was age 27. I graduated from City College of New York. I was heavily involved in athletics, both in high school, college. Did a lot of track and field. I wrestled. I competed powerlifting. I also continued that after college. I moved out from
We can't hear you. Said I can't hear you for some reason.
I can't hear you.
Okay, it's back now.
Very good. Okay, all right, I'll start over again. So I lived in New York City for my first 27 years primarily. Graduated from college in 1981, City College of New York. I grew up from a middle-class family. I moved out when I was 17 years old, supported myself through my senior year of high school and college, heavily involved in athletics, wrestling, powerlifting, track and field. And I did that basically for about 9 years. I've always worked, if you would, a middle class type job. I drove a tractor trailer, I drove a tow truck, worked in grocery stores, I mixed acid, and a lot of hand labor type jobs until I was 27. At that point, I moved to Virginia Beach and I became a police officer. And I served on the Virginia Beach Police Department for 30 years. And I retired as sergeant. And I retired 5 years ago, and I moved out to Nevada. And this is where I made my home. I have a comfortable retirement between pension and Social Security. And so that's what I'm doing out here. Question is, why am I running? Let me give you an example of my mindset. When I first got on the police department in 1985, other officers would say, these new hires, they stink. They're horrible. And every academy, they said about the new hires, they stink, they're horrible officers. And that's the type of environment I was in when I first got hired in 1985. So the police department on my third year in had its first field training officer training. And I said, I'm going to make a difference over here. If everybody says these police officers stink, I feel as though I'm now learning to be a good police officer. I'm going to train them. And I became a field training officer. I actually trained 80 police officers one-to-one as a police officer. I was also the field training officer sergeant. Again, what I did, I was on hiring boards. This way we would get better quality officers. I taught in the police academy for several academies, different type of subject matter. And I was also on department review committees, which would examine internal affair complaints, citizen complaints against police officers. And if needed, we would put recommendations in to fire those officers. So in other words, I've always believed in making things better. Okay, that's my mindset. I like making things better. Being out here in Nevada, I noticed that there's been a lot of changes in the state that I don't like. Schools, taxes, issues with police, and I feel as though I could help make those things better. So instead of standing around and just griping and being upset at the world, I decided to make a difference. Now, what sets me apart from other candidates, as I said, I'm comfortably retired. I have a good life. I'm not wealthy, far from it, but I enjoy my life. A lot of political candidates, they're very self-serving. They're doing this to have an agenda, just to do more political rises using the assembly as a stepping stone. And I'm not to do that. I'm 62 years old. I'm probably only going to spend, assuming I get elected, no more than 2 terms in the assembly. Like to enjoy the rest of my retirement. But in the meantime, I want to make Nevada a better place for everybody that's in it.
Okay, great. Can you tell us what are your district? What does it entail? What areas is your district?
Okay, my district is kind of like a big rectangle. It includes North Las Vegas Airport. It's a little bit of Las Vegas and a lot of North Las Vegas. It stretches, as I said, North Las Vegas Airport, the Fiesta Casino, and Texas Station. It goes from Cheyenne up to Craig, so that's from the south to the north, and then from Rancho to North Lamb. So it's about 2 miles high by about 8 miles wide. It's kind of like a big, crazy looking rectangle.
Okay, that area is fairly diverse then.
Yes, it is.
I know that area. Okay. So now tell me, what are your top issues? What are the platforms what are the platforms that you are running in to be elected?
Okay, well, as I said, I have extensive police knowledge. I primarily worked as a uniform patrol in my 30 years. I was uniform patrol sergeant. I loved working uniform patrol. I like to interact with citizens. I was involved in the first community policing project in Virginia Beach, and the first proposal was actually mine. It was called the POP at the time, before they came up with the terminology community policing, which is police on patrol. I had the first one with the police department. I was even a community policing sergeant. So public safety is my first. The second one is police reform. As you know, that's a very hot topic today, police reform. I was on, as I stated, disciplinary review boards, and I also handled internal fear complaints. I know what it takes to make police officers and police departments better, that'll work both for the police officer, the department, and the community. Next issue is the tax issue. I believe, in a nutshell, no new taxes. That's both for citizens and for businesses. If I have my way about me, I'll get rid of what's called the modified business tax, which I'll explain to you later on. And then my fourth subject would be school choice. If you look at most of the candidates for assembly, they all have paragraphs about how we're going to make schools better on their websites. We're going to make schools better. We're going to make schools better. If you look at national surveys, our schools, depending upon the survey, are ranked between 41 and 51. And that's horrendous. That's nationally. We have to make schools better. And the way I see it, it would be with school choice and education savings accounts / vouchers. And again, I'll talk to you about that. So those are my 4 main topics, would be public safety, police reform, taxes, and schools.
Okay, thank you. Public safety and police reform. Let's talk a little more detail to those two. What do you believe should happen? Obviously, we're in times, in trying times right now. We're dealing with a lot of things that are going on. There's talk about defunding the police. There's talk about reforming the police. A lot of people, it's just a different word type of issue. Give me your opinion on how those two, because I'm going to put those two together, public safety and police reform. What do you think needs to happen?
Okay, first of all, with public safety, the police have to actually get out into the communities a little bit more. Now, I realize in a place like Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, all of Clark County, it's hot out here. And police, it's very spread out localities. It's a little bit different from where I was as a police officer. Housing was a little bit tighter and a little bit closer. But you can have what's called bicycle police officers on community policing. That's what my squad would have. I would definitely increase funding for community policing orientated policing. That will put the police officers out on the street. And the thing that I liked about being in uniform patrol and community policing, you're not always responsive to a call for service. In other words, there's a fight down the street, 5 miles away, go to it. And then as a police officer, you rush up in there in the police car, you got to try to figure out who all these people are running around and who caused the fight and what the fight's over. When you're doing community policing on a bicycle, you're actually there. You talk with people, you get to interrelate with them. I've gone over people's houses that invite me over for dinner and lunch on my breaks. You actually meet people, you talk with them, and you're right there. You might see, let's say, the argument before it escalates into a fight. That's what you're doing when you're community policing. You're helping people. If somebody, let's say, has a bicycle that's stolen, you're taking that report and you're finding the bicycle yourself. You're not just a police officer in a patrol car, take the report down for the stolen bicycle and drive away and never see it again. You're actually involved in the community. By doing that, you gain a trust with the community. And I'll give you a perfect example. I rode the all-terrain vehicle on the beach. We had a place called Chicks Beach, and we would have issues with people in the water. They'd want to fight and get drunk and just do stupid things. And I knew so many people, and if a police officer's watching this, they're going to say, oh my God, but I knew so many people on the beach. You can't go into the water with your gun belt on. It's not going to work. I could actually hand my gun belt to people on the beach that I was just very well equipped.
Hold on, I'm trying to find out. The speaker can't hear you again. I can't hear you again for some reason.
Got you now. Okay. Okay. Where did I leave off, Brian?
You said you could give your gun to somebody on the beach and go into the water.
Exactly. And that just demonstrates the community trust that I have in them and they have in me. And, that's a perfect example. They knew that I could handle the situation without backup because there was no radios, no cell phones, no nothing back then. You just handled it. And that's a perfect example of what a community policing is. The people trust you, you trust them. Okay, so that's part of public safety that I would put out there. Now, police.
I can't hear you again. There's something on your side.
I don't know.
Back in again.
I actually had everything increased my speed on the computer last week with Cox. So,
okay, well, I can hear you now. You're
okay.
going in and out.
All right. Can you hear me now? It's all good?
Yes.
Okay. So in reference to police reform, as I said, I was on what's called the Department Review Board. And I was also, as a sergeant, you get internal affair complaints. So what I would do, we reviewed any type of misconduct allegations on police, both internal and from citizens. Now, there was 4 reasons that I would look for the extreme, because being a police officer is a career, 4 extremes that I would look at to fire a police officer, okay, in my opinion. First off is stealing. No police officer should ever steal. Number 2.
Hold on. Number 2 is what? I can't hear you. You're out again. Hold on.
Are you there?
Okay, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so are you there?
Yeah, you had, I heard stealing. What's the next one?
Okay, first one is stealing. Second one is lying. Okay? There's no place for a police officer to be dishonest. If you're ever caught lying, you could never testify in court. Okay? We can't believe you. So that's number two. Number three is narcotic use. Obviously, narcotics and police do not go together. And then the fourth one that I always put in was an egregious use of force. I'm not just talking somebody says the police officer pushed me and I didn't think it was right, or the handcuffs were on too tight, because that's something that's an internal thing and maybe a training issue, or just could be somebody complaining. You don't know. I'm talking an egregious use of force. The police officer should be fired. Now, where I would come in as an assemblyman, I would introduce a bill that if you are fired for any of those four reasons, you could never become a public safety officer in the state of Nevada again. Conversely, if you were fired from another state for any of those four reasons, you could never become a public safety officer in the state of Nevada. That's the way I see it. And I would definitely introduce that bill. It maintains the integrity of the department that you're on, the integrity of all departments in Nevada, and the integrity of police nationally. Okay, in my opinion, 99.9% of police officers are great people, good public servants, trying to do the best job they can. But when you get these few bad apples, we don't need them going out to another police department.
Okay. Give me your opinion. Obviously, the state assembly just modified. They had put out what is called the Policeman's Bill of Rights in the last session, and it's been modified now because of obviously many of the things that are going on today. Give me your opinion of both of them, the initial bill and the modifications done on the bill in this session.
I haven't heard of all of the modifications that they've done. The big modification that I heard was that they were going to increase if a police officer has a complaint on them, that it could be pursued instead of 1 year through 5 years.
Mm-hmm. You say that again? I can't hear you again. Hold on. Hello? Hold on.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, you're back now.
Okay, so in reference to that, the one thing that I disagree with is that there was a provision in there that the police officer's home address could be given out. And I don't think that a police officer's home address should ever be given out. I mean, there's just too many people out there that want to cause harm to you, disagree with you, whatever. And the bottom line is, yes, a police officer is a public servant, but he also has a certain amount of privacy. He's not an elected official, and so he deserves that type of privacy. So that's the one thing I would definitely exclude from it.
One of them was to ban chokeholds. What are your thoughts there?
In 30 years as a police officer, I've only had to use a chokehold on one person. That person was about 6'7", more than 300 pounds. And at the time, I weighed about 175 pounds, and I'm 6 foot tall. 30 years. When I was fighting this fellow, to be honest with you, if you ever looked at the cartoon character Bugs Bunny fighting the pro wrestler with the muscles that go on top of muscles and all, that's probably the way that looked like me fighting this guy. Now, I power lifted, I wrestled for 30 years, but this guy was basically, in a nutshell, twice my size. And the only way I could bring him down was with the chokehold. If not, he'd have beat me to a pulp, or who knows what would have happened. And actually what had started this whole thing, he was beating up his 5 foot tall, 100-pound girlfriend. And I came upon him and I stopped.
Okay, but listen, we're not talking about you. We're talking about across the country. We've seen on TV, historically and predominantly black men who have been killed because they put in chokeholds simply for selling cigarettes on the street. Or simply with Floyd and it wasn't a chokehold, but it was a chokehold for supposedly passing a $20 bill. We've had here in Vegas a man who had mental problems that was put into a chokehold and killed. So this isn't about you. This was about the issue of chokeholds, and disproportionately are used on African American men, and they're dying on what would be considered minor offenses. So that's why I asked this, again, as we talk, and I understand your experience, but many times we need to look at what's happening in the world and why there is now a push to end chokeholds. So we'll just agree to disagree on this one. Now I'll ask you again, you made a statement that they had a Bill of Rights. They had to modify it because literally it was impossible to put bad cops off the street. It was an ironclad agreement where you couldn't get information, you couldn't do anything, and the public is concerned because if you are able to carry a gun and you're able to kill somebody, you should be held to a higher standard, not a lower standard. And so it's interesting. That's why I asked your opinion there, because this is the Independent Black Voters, and we're talking to you about the issues that are not so much about you, but more about your community. And so I asked you those questions, and I ask you to rethink and maybe look at some of those issues, not through the lenses of yourself, but through the lenses of the community. You have a very diverse community. And,
Right.
and that's the thing that some people don't realize.
Definitely. Now, Brian, that's exactly what I was talking about, an egregious use of force. If there's basically a life and death situation, and there's just so many situations police officers could be in, I could sit here all day long and tell you a million of them that I've been involved in 30 years working as a street officer. But in my opinion, only in life and death situations should that chokehold be used. And that's where we come back to where I was saying about an egregious use of force. The police officer should be fired, okay? There's no reason, let's say, for cigarette selling to put somebody in a chokehold, okay? That's an egregious use of force, whether or not the person dies, okay? That police officer needed to be fired, period, okay? And never become a police officer in another department, at least in Nevada, as far as I'm concerned, all right?
Okay.
So there's certain things that people just don't need to be police officers, and if that's recognized, they don't need to be a public safety officer any place. So that's exactly what I was talking about when it comes to use of force and egregious use of force.
Okay. Public safety. These are questions that I like to tie them all together. I know you said no new taxes, but you were talking about increasing the funding for public safety. How do we do increased funding here when we're running a major deficit in the state because of obviously the pandemic and other issues going on? So how would you fund this increase the funding for public safety?
Okay, well, obviously with the pandemic, everything has been cut, okay? So this is an extraordinary circumstance, and at this juncture, the answer would be no, we can't increase the funding, okay? If anything, unfortunately, very good programs have to be cut because there's just no money, okay? And that's as simple about it. I'm talking about when things get back to normal, they need to be increased. In the last state budget, state police budget was reduced 2.5%, not increased. The reason why I say that the police budget has to be increased is twofold. First of all, you need more training. When I entered the police department in 1985,
We lost you again. Yeah, give me a second. Keep talking. Let's see if you come in. Can you hear me? Try talking. Okay, I think you're back. Let's go.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get back to what I was saying. So our state police fund was decreased 2%. Now, training, it's twofold. Training is a lot of money, okay? It costs a lot. When I came on the police department in 1985, I had an 8-week police academy, no field training officer, and our general orders were this thick. Times change. Court rulings change. Circumstances involving things change. A lot of things change. By the time I retired, the police academy became more than 6 months. We had 4 months of field training, and our general orders would have been.
I lost you again. I can't hear you. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Let's see if you come back in.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
you're back. You're back.
All right, so policing always evolves, okay? You have Supreme Court rulings, different type of court rulings, it evolves. Police have to be trained with those new things that are coming out. Training is expensive. If you have a 1,000-man police department and you could train, let's argument's sake, 60 officers at a time, you have to rotate them through shifts or give overtime, replace them while they're off the street with other police officers. It's expensive. One training session for a 1,000-man police department, let's say for 3 or 4 days, could easily cost $1 million. People don't realize it. It's very, very expensive. Sometimes you'll have outside consultants come in that have to be paid. So that's one reason why funding has to be increased. A better trained police officer is a better police officer. Second of all, being a police officer is a career, okay? It's kind of like being a doctor. You ask yourself, would you want a surgeon that's only been operating on people for 6 months or a year? Personally, I'd say I'd want a surgeon. I'm sure he's a very good surgeon, but I'd want somebody with a little more experience if they're going to be poking inside my body. Well, a police officer, you stated before, they're given authority to carry a gun. In my opinion, and having trained so many police officers, you're truly not proficient in being a police officer till at least 5 years. And typically you need at least 10 years before you could say, that's a good police.
I'm losing you again. Keep talking. Let's see if you can come back in.
You there?
I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. So police officers, they're like anybody else. They need to get pay raises or else they're going to go to another job. And what you need is job retention for police officers. Job retention makes a better quality police officer.
You're gone again. You're gone. Hello?
Are you there? Can you hear me?
You.
Okay, so I was saying that you're truly not proficient as a police officer till you have 5 to 10 years on. That's why we want job retention, and therefore the police should get at least cost of living increases every year. You want to keep those experienced officers out there who then also teach young officers. If you look at most of the national headlines, not the Floyd case, that guy was an idiot. He needed to be fired long ago, okay? So we'll have to excuse those couple bad cops. But a lot of times when you see officers that are doing these things that make national news, they generally have less than 5 years on. Case in point, the other 3 officers that were involved with the Floyd case, one was on the street, I want to say 3 days, another one 4 days, and another one was on 2 years. In effect, they're all rookies. Okay, now they should have stopped the gentleman in the Floyd case and gotten Mr. Floyd up, okay, and just put an end to it. But the bottom line is they were rookies, okay? And if you look at just about any national excessive use of force case, all these officers have less than 5 years on. Because departments, they cut back on police funding, which makes police officers go to other jobs.
Okay, but a couple things. Many of the lead people on there, yes, the people involved, but many of the lead people have a lot of experience. Which brings me to the issue. Obviously, there's a lot of unrest in this country. Obviously, the Floyd issue has turned a button, but really what you're hearing is a fight against systemic racism, which is much more than police brutality, but an overall system that is here. Tell me what you think when you hear the word Black Lives Matter, and tell me what you think is going on as it pertains to that.
Well, I understand what it means with the origination of Black Lives Matter. It turned out at one time, and probably even right now, if a black person gets killed, a black person gets kidnapped, you don't hear about it on TV, and that's just the reality. If a rich white person is missing, you hear about it all along national news. If a rich white person gets killed by a police officer, it's on national news. But unfortunately, too often, if a black person gets killed, kidnapped as a victim of a crime, you just don't hear about it. And that's where Black lives, from what I understand, actually originated. Okay, it's to give a voice where black people are the victims of some type of injustice, crime, or something like that, and this way they could hear black voices out. And I'm 100% for that, that there needs to be more national attention on what is going on with black people when it comes to violence against them, kidnappings as victims of crimes, because it's just not publicized.
Okay, what if I told you from a perspective of a black man that Black Lives Matter is a movement with the belief that we must fight against what we see systemic racism. Systemic
Yeah.
racism, yes.
Oh,
Let me finish. I say systemic racism is basically, it has many moving parts. It is not just police brutality. It is basically wealth inequality, it's social injustice. It's the fact that government killings are basically based around the fact that one group is treated harsher, much more harsher than another group. We've seen not just the Floyds, we've seen black women executed in the middle of the night while they're asleep with no repercussions. We've seen, even in Minnesota, a black man who had a permit to carry shot like a dog in his car simply when he told them he had a gun and it was registered. We've seen in New York people being killed. So the whole movement is not what you said. The movement is for fair and equality, fair and equal justice, along with fair and equal justice and opportunity throughout the country. We have a major problem right here that people need to realize. Systemic racism has been with us forever, since from the end of slavery till now. It is the reason that the African Americans are dealing with being at the lower part of the economic structure. But police brutality is just a tool in the toolbox of systemic racism. Because it's interesting, you told me that you, Virginia Beach, I'm a little bit younger, you probably about 2 or 3 years. We were never comfortable when we went to Virginia Beach if you were a black person going to Virginia Beach. We knew that we would be treated differently than someone else just for being on the beach. And that is the whole issue of what is going on in this movement. Is we've heard a lot of people try to redefine it. It's a movement that says if we are going to call ourselves America, the greatest country in the world, then we need to treat the people, be they black, brown, purple, or green, with the same respect. And we need to address the fact. Here's the fact. You may have a couple of bad apples, but if you don't root them out, then the basket becomes bad. That is a major issue. You are in an area that is very diverse, Hispanic, black, and white. And that's why I ask you, if you're coming here as a representative to all people there, you must really know this isn't about what your thoughts are. You have to be in tune on what's really going on in the communities that you want to serve. So I make that statement because I think a lot of people have been given misinformation on purpose on what this movement is. It is to end, destroy a major problem. It's not a few bad apples. It's not a few bad apples in our community. We're stopped, we're prosecuted for the least and the smallest crime that other people would be let off on. We're targeted for walking while black, driving while black, eating while black, going to the pool while black. And that's a major problem that we have in America, and it cannot be swept over the rug, and it cannot be handled by just saying we need to have more law and order. So I want to make that statement because I ask you first to listen on what your issues are and tell you what we as far as independent black voters are saying to candidates to understand. So let's go to the tax issues and the school choice, and tell me a little bit more of your thoughts on those.
Okay. When it comes to taxes, first of all, I believe in no new taxes, period. Okay, that's my full statement with that. Are you there, Brian, by the way?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, looked like you froze up for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, it's my understanding that they want to incorporate a mileage tax on cars. They would like to increase sales taxes. They would also like to increase.
I lost you. Hold on for a second. Well, let's give us a second. Let me see if you come back in.
Are you there?
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, great. This is crazy. I don't know what's happening with this internet, but okay. So as I was saying, what they're looking at doing is implementing a mileage tax on all cars, increasing sales tax on everything that we buy. They're also looking at increasing property tax. And then fourth thing is our Constitution says there will be no state income tax. What they're looking at doing is changing the Constitution and actually incorporating a state income tax. And by doing that, that's going to influence every single person that's a resident of Nevada between those four taxes. The next thing I would do is get rid of, in reference to businesses, what's called a modified business tax. If you have employee payroll that exceeds $50,000, you get an extra tax on your business for being successful. Mm. And for some reason, all of that money goes to San Francisco. I don't know what it does in San Francisco, but it doesn't stay in Nevada. And that's the penalty on businesses just for being in business. Now, you had mentioned the pandemic earlier. What are we going to do about it? My opinion is, first of all businesses that were closed due to the pandemic should be given a 1-month moratorium on paying any Nevada state business taxes. This way they get a chance to reboot their business. If they don't reboot their business, they're going to be out of business. The second thing I look at when it comes to businesses is if you start a new business in Nevada, you should be given a 1-year moratorium on business taxes again. And the reason is we want to promote new businesses in Nevada. And then the third thing is if you actually start a manufacturing business in Nevada, such as Amazon just built a warehouse out here employing 1,000 people, a 2-year moratorium on taxes for new manufacturing businesses so they could boot up, get people employed. And that's the whole purpose, is that we get people employed in businesses and manufacturing away from the entertainment industry. Our state is very, very heavily reliant on entertainment. It includes conventions, gambling, sports. And when the COVID pandemic happened, it put so many people out of business. If you have poor, stable businesses, such as small businesses, big businesses, and manufacturing businesses, it'll provide a steady source of employment for people.
Okay.
Let's get them back to work.
And I'll say I agree with you on the bulk of your tax issues. As an entrepreneur, I believe that we are taxed to death, and we have to come up with some solutions to be more fiscally responsible with our taxes. So we agree for the most part on that. I do have a major problem right now. You use Amazon as an example. Here we have Bezos, which is one of the richest persons in the world right now, but he pays little or no taxes overall when you look at his company because of the tax breaks that he gets. And the fact that he's bringing in not major paying companies, but many times it's minimum or slightly above minimum wages, yet we're giving him the house. And that's why he's become so rich. So I believe that we do have to deal with taxes for the average person. We need to address the taxes. But I believe that for the people who are basically reaping the benefits disproportionately, that they maybe need to be taxed more.
Well, that might be true in the future, but the bottom line is if we don't give, let's say Bezos, okay, this billionaire, a tax break, he's not going to open up anything in Nevada. He's going to open it in a different state. He might go to Nevada, to Arizona. He might go to Utah, might go to California. We at least have to get those companies transplanted here. When Tesla opened up its Gigafactory for battery making, they did that in northern Nevada. That was a great thing. It put a lot of people to work. Unfortunately, we lost the Tesla building trucks. They put that down in Texas. If maybe we offered these big tax breaks to Tesla, we'd have truck manufacturing here, putting people to work. So I agree with you. It's a double-edged sword. You don't want to give these billionaires every single tax break, but we need the manufacturing and we need the jobs out here in Nevada. That's what I'm looking at, is the core jobs to get people working. Let's work on the future tax structure for those big companies later on.
So do you, looking back, we gave major money and tax breaks along with money to the Raiders to come here. What's your opinion on that, on the Raiders Stadium and the Raiders bringing them in here? If you look at the expense that was passed on to the community.
Okay, I don't think that there should have been an expense passed on to the community. They could have easily have funded that with bonds, with private businesses. I don't think that anything should have came out of taxpayer money, because it's not even just the stadium, it's the whole infrastructure that had to be incorporated. Everything from the practice facility out in Henderson, different roads, sewer, gas lines, everything incorporated with the stadium, or the whole infrastructure, buying other properties for parking. All that should have been done privately and with bonds, nothing with taxpayer money.
Okay. Yes, and it's interesting because from the perspective of an African American, there were a lot of things promised, and this is the thing: there were promises called community benefits that did not. We saw in the Black community very few benefits from this $700 million that was given to billionaires so that they would build a facility that's theirs. So this is an example, and it kind of goes even with the talk. We spend a lot of money giving money to billionaires to come and open jobs. And when you look at what we've given from a tax base, we're literally buying the jobs for these people to open a business in our communities. And when you start to take away your tax base from these companies that should be paying, it becomes very hard to not run a deficit and very hard to not tax the average people, because somebody's got to pay. As I said, overall, I believe that the tax structure here bothers me in a lot of ways. And we need to not think that taxes or raising taxes is the solution right now. So if you're not going to raise taxes, what are you going to do? You told me about the moratorium, or for a year, or do something else, but that's not going to cover the kind of deficits we're going to have for the coming years. What other ideas would you do to change that you think might allow us to continue to go forward as a Clark County area, and be able to, not just Clark County, but Nevada, and be able to pay our bills?
Well, unfortunately, as I stated before, cutbacks had to happen. When you're more than $1 billion in deficit, it's just like having money in your pocket and you have to go food shopping. Sometimes you have to go and cut back a little bit in places that you normally wouldn't do it. If you're out of a job and you got $50 in your pocket, you don't go out and buy the ice cream, you go out and buy the staples for your food. And that's what the government has to do. In my opinion, it'll probably take at least a year once COVID ends before we could actually restore our proper tax base. Obviously, a big tax base for what we get is things like entertainment, the casinos, conventions. That's huge for Nevada, the millions and millions of dollars that they come in. So unfortunately, some of the hard choices have to be made. In the last legislature that we had, they increased spending by more than 10%. And a lot of these things, they expanded all these government agencies and
You're stopped for a minute. You've locked up for a minute. Can you hear me?
just don't have
Hello?
the money.
Okay, there you go.
You lost me.
No, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
where did I leave off at?
So let me talk to you about school choice and your education stance. Talk to me about your version or your vision.
Okay, what school choice is, if people don't know, uh, if your child is in an underrated school, the teachers aren't performing, the children are performing poorly, you as the parent have an option to say, I want my child to go to that better performing school. So if your school, argument's sake, say is ranked number 100 in the state, where your elementary school child is going, you could potentially say, I want my child to go to that school 10 miles away that's ranked number 4th in the state. And that's what school choice is about. It would be the parent's choice to say, I don't want my child to go to this school. That's going to do a couple of things. First of all, it's going to incentivize that school administrator to make their school better because schools are giving funding by the amount of students that are there. If all of this, or a good percentage of the students say, we're going to leave this underperforming school and go to the better school, it's going to give an incentive for that school administrator to work harder and build up that school. So that's what school choice is basically. It lets the parents decide where their kids go to school. The other thing is what's called ESAs, which is education savings accounts. This was actually put in the legislature 2 legislatures ago, but it was never funded. What one has to imagine education savings accounts are is the parent can decide if they would like their children to go, let's say, to a private school, a religious school, and instead of the parent paying, the state would then divert the funds normally for that child to be going to a state school to go to that private school. Conversely, if the parent wanted to teach the child at home with homeschooling and use private tutors, they would be given financial compensation for those private tutors. So what this basically means is that between school choice and education savings accounts, the parents determine how their child is going to receive their type of schooling. Also, if they would like this child to get vocational training, if they're in high school, everybody's not going to move on to college. People need vocational training. We had what's called VOTEC in Virginia Beach. It was great. They had automotive. They had so many different programs that high school students could actually learn a trade and become apprentices to become plumbers, electricians, auto mechanics. And that's what the child would want to do. Everybody's not college material. That's the reality of it. And again, this would fund parents to send their children to the schools of their choice, and the parents could determine the education that the children get.
Okay, tell me something. Why do you think we have underperforming schools?
Well, sometimes it's the administrator, sometimes it's the teacher, uh, you know, uh, there's a lot of different factors. Sometimes it's the makeup of the neighborhood, such as, let's say you have a lot of non-English speaking children going to that particular neighborhood. They have to be taught English as a second language. And, you could get somebody from out of country that maybe is 12 years old, but only has a second grade education. And they have to be brought back up to standards from this country of what the education should be. Sometimes it's just a lack of the administrators or the teachers just really caring, and they just go and push the kids up to the next grade. I saw this in Virginia Beach, where we would have high school students, and I for what it's worth, I've arrested a number of teenagers, and a lot of times the court would say, write a letter of apology to the police officer for what you did. And these graduating seniors had, it appeared as though, sixth grade education writing skills. And they're just shuffling them up, moving them, and the children aren't actually learning. And that's due to underperforming schools. And there's just so many variables that contribute to it. But if you have that school choice, that's going to give that individual school the incentive to work harder, better, and smarter to try to educate those children.
Okay, here's my perspective from a Black America that's looking at what's going on here and has actually been in the school system and has a pretty good look at underperforming schools. And here's my concern about both school choice and vouchers. The public school system was put together to try to create a level playing field for education. It was put together because, and if you look at the history of America, Black America was purposely left to be uneducated, and the funds were diverted to other areas and not in our communities. Well, a lot of that is still happening today. Even in Clark County, which has one of the worst performing schools, there are really two school systems in one. They're the haves and they're the have-nots, or the have-nothings. When you look at the schools that are underperforming, and I live in Henderson, which is a very good performing school. When you go in those schools, they all have Chromebooks. They get to take them home. They get to use them. Even when we had the pandemic, they had access to to do distance learning. When you go to the schools that do not have, they have Chromebooks that are locked in cabinets. They are able to use them sparingly. They were not able to take them home. And so they got further and further behind on the scale of education. When you look at the school that I'm very familiar with, they have the highest degree in there of substitute teachers, or now they want to call them guest teachers, but the bottom line is they do not have the people needed to educate them to be very good. These kids want to learn, but they're at a disadvantage today in the system that is designed to be fair and balanced. What concerns me about people that feel good about school choice is that's a choice for the people who have. There's no choice for the people who have not. If you are in a family and you are barely able to take care of and pay for just living, and now you give me a choice to send my kid to another school, but yo and behold, it now means that they have to travel across town. It now means that my expenses go up. Then even though it is a low performer, you're going to be forced to stay in that position. Here's the other issue. If you are taking more money away from the low performing schools because we're now giving it to the better performing schools, we're helping the ones that are doing great, and we're destroying the others. We're creating a two-tier educational system. And unless somebody is going to give me an idea on how public school systems can be saved and everybody rises with the tide, all we're doing is going back to Jim Crow. We're setting up a two-tier, we have a two-tiered system right now, the have and the have-nots. We now create a three-tiered system, the haves, the have-nots, and the have-nothings. It concerns me. People who have are very pro school choice. People who have not realize they're going to be left with whatever's there. Now, I grew up in the area of people had their choices to go to Catholic schools or Protestant schools or whatever. And they paid that extra tag because they chose to leave the school system. I have a problem when we take money from people who have chosen to leave a school system that was designed for everyone to have equal opportunity and then give them money for leaving. I believe, just as in the past, if you decide you want to take your kids to a private school, then pay the cost to take them to a private school, but don't take the money away from struggling public schools. It creates a three-tiered system, the haves, the have-nots, and the have-nothings. We need to be fixated on fixing the schools. We need to look at why is it that we have certain areas in the school district that don't have stable teachers. I'm more concerned about stability of the teachers, putting in teachers that can teach math, that can teach English, and giving these people who are struggling to survive a better opportunity for a better life. That, to me, is what is more important to me than having school choice. It is, and it comes across to the people that are black and brown, as another attempt to move the dollars away and to change the opportunities for them to have a better life. So that's why I'll finish there and let you give me your rebuttal to what I've said.
Okay, Brian, if you've looked at my website I had given you, you'll see where I went to elementary school, it was approximately 50% black. I grew up in very diverse neighborhoods in New York City. Then we had what's called junior high school. It was about 60% black. My high school.
Give us a second. I can't hear you.
I got into a major
Okay.
car accident where I lost my scholarship. Okay. Let me know when you hear me.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. So I lost my wrestling scholarship because basically I walked like Groucho Marx for a year, and I wound up going to City College of New York. If you know where City College is, it's in Harlem, between 125th and 135th Street. So I went to a black college in effect, okay? It was probably 75% black. So I've gone to, if you would, all of the mixed race schools ever since I was a child. Well, my point is when it comes to school choice and education savings account, our state is ranked between 41st and 51st in the country in our school system. And the only reason why it's 51st is because Washington, D.C. was included. We're actually below Washington, D.C. I think if America Samoa was included, we'd probably be 52nd, depending upon who you look at. We have to try to do something to change how our school system is. If you look at just about every person running for the Nevada legislature, they say, I'm going to make the schools better. We're going to work on the education system. My predecessor in this assembly district, she has paragraphs about how to make the school system better. She's been in this district for 3 terms. The schools in this district stink, okay? She's done nothing at all to help the school system. If you look at most of the legislatures, they're saying, we got to throw more money at it. We're going to make the schools better. But nothing is working. We have to sometimes make a hard choice, reevaluate, and let's do something different. In places that have things such as school choice and education savings accounts, school vouchers, those schools typically nationally are ranked in the teens and the 20s in national rankings. So they are actually accomplishing it, and they're doing it. If they could do it, we have to try something different from what we're doing other than just throwing money at the schools, and let's try to get our kids educated. The bottom line is we have to work for the children, not for the adults.
Okay. Again, I appreciate you giving me your opinions. And again, this is the independent black voter. So first of all, Tony, I want to thank you because we reached out to Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and many people don't understand. I am nonpartisan. I want to know your views, and hopefully you want to know my views. Because if you are going to be a community servant as a state assembly person, it is not just about you. It's about trying to understand what all of your communities feel. Right now, there are major problems that I'm glad are being addressed right now. Systemic racism is a major issue in this country. Do you really understand what is systemic racism?
I certainly do, 100%, and I realize exactly what you were explaining before. Let me give you an example about my attitude, okay? I can only talk about myself and what I've trained other police officers, people I've encountered, friends, family about. I'm going to give you a perfect example. We had a large gathering of African Americans come to Virginia Beach. And by the way, I was a big ticket writer, okay? I wrote a lot of tickets. And I was also a trainer in window tint. Without getting into whole laws, there's a lot of laws in Virginia against window tint. So my chief of police said, look, we have a lot of African Americans coming from up north. They have window tint. I don't want you to write any window tint tickets this entire weekend. And you know what I told the chief of police? And I was just a patrol officer at the time. I said, Chief, the day that I start deciding whom I'm going to write a ticket to and whom I'm not, that's racism, okay? I write white citizens in Virginia Beach all year long tickets for window tint. Now you're asking me to pick and choose. The day I start pick and choosing, that's the day that other people are going to pick and choose. Well, maybe I'm just going to write black people for window tint. That's wrong, okay? You treat everybody the same. That's my opinion. The day that you pick and choose who you talk about, who you treat, that's where you get the systemic racism. And I'm not going to do that. And I believe treating everybody equal, right, wrong, or otherwise, okay? If it works for them, if it works against them, everybody gets the same shot, when it comes down to things. And so that's my opinion on it. And if you have people, in my opinion, such as myself, that relates this opinion to other people, it gets rid of systemic racism. You get leaders. Like I said, I was a field training officer. I was an instructor. I was on the hiring board. And I put my attitudes out there about equality. And that's what it takes, is the leaders to get rid of the systemic racism.
Okay, let me give you a different view of systemic racism. First of all, the definition of racism. And many people agree or disagree. Racism is when one group has the ability to negatively affect the quality of life of another group. Racism is not one person not liking another person. Racism is not one person calling another person a name. That may be bigotry, and that may be prejudice. But racism is when you have Tulsa, Oklahoma. You ever heard of Black Wall Street?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
That's racism, when you can destroy a city on a lie. Racism is when you can come in and you can systematically change a large group of people because you have the power. Racism is a power game. It's the ability to do things differently. The police and police brutality is part of systemic racism, but systemic racism from the state assembly side. Let me give you an example. We're 13% of the populace, but our businesses are starved because of the good old boy system, which is alive and well. When you look at the stadium, I asked them how many black businesses and black people were employed. They did not want to give me the answer because they knew it was horrendous. Do you know we have laws that public works, we're supposed to know the amount of people working by race and their businesses by race, but we don't enforce it because we know it is dismal. From the purchasing, throughout the government, from purchasing requirements and procurement requirements, black businesses are locked out of the opportunity for economics. That is what is systemic racism. That is what we look as racism. It is not what you interpret as racism. If you look at how to fix the school systems, and I've said this over and over again, it is not your plan. There's a direct correlation between poverty and poor scores. So taking money away from schools is not the answer. Dealing with systemic racism, creating a level playing field, making it so that our government is truly a government of the people. We're 13% of the populace, but little money from government procurement comes to black businesses. Little opportunity comes there. And it's not because we don't have we can't have the businesses if the game is rigged. It's a rigged economic game. So here's the thing in the state assembly. I've listened to what your issues are. I challenge you to listen to what our issues are and really understand what is systemic racism. When you start to realize what the real problems are in your community, they may look to support you. Because right now, we don't look at party, we look at people. And if you're taking a party stance and you're just looking at the issues because that's what your party does, that's why they're going to find themselves in trouble. So I challenge you to look a little deeper and try to really understand what's going on. You have a very diverse, both Hispanic, and guess what? If they are from Mexico, wherever they are Americans, and they need to be treated with the same respect of all Americans. You say you can't hear? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, let's give it a second and see if it can go in. Okay, you're back. I can hear you now.
I lost it for a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay, let me go to you. You have a lot of Hispanics. They are the growing populace here in Las Vegas per se. The Black, we have 13% of the populace. I challenge you to find out what our real reasons are and issues. Because if you're just towing the party line, you will lose. If you are truly trying to be a community state assembly for everyone, then you need to brush up on what's going on. And this is a start. This is the Independent Black Voters. We're not the Review Journal. We don't want to hear the party lines. We want you to dig a little deeper and see if maybe you're willing to reevaluate your platform and not make it for a certain sect or group in your state, in your area, assembly area, but for all people in your assembly area. So this is the first of a series. Obviously, I'm going to see if I can get the two of you all on in the debate. We don't debate. We have town hall discussions. So
No problem.
I thank you for coming on here. That speaks volumes.
Yes,
I hope that you will watch this because it will go up on Black Book TV and the Independent Black Voters. I hope that you will listen to some of the issues that we're throwing out there because I'm not tied to the Democratic Party. I'm not tied to the Republican Party. I'm not tied to the Libertarian Party. I'm tied to the social justice and economic. Huh? Hold on. You'll get there. Come on. Are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, let me finish this and then I'll give it to you to talk. Let me finish what I was going to say, my thought, and then I want you to respond. I'm not tied to the Republican Party. I'm not tied to the Democratic Party. I'm not tied to the Libertarian Party. I'm tied to the party for social justice and social and wealth equality, the ability for people to have an opportunity to be the best they can in America, and it's not there right now. So now I'm gonna let you speak. I'll get off my platform and let you talk.
Okay, well, basically, if you take a look at my election platform, it's not the typical Republican conservative platform. I've been asked by unions my opinion, okay, which I know typically Republicans are against union. I'm an ex-Teamster. I drove a tractor trailer. I was a warehouseman.
Can't hear you. Hello?
Hello?
Okay, you're back.
Can you hear me? Oh, gone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know where I left off there. Let me start over again. Okay, so let me try to get my thoughts back again. I was saying before. So I don't have the traditional Republican mantra. I know what you were trying to say. Yes, I am running as a Republican. I expressed to you before the Independent American Party also supports me. Can't always agree 100% with what one person goes and says, as long as you could agree with the bulk of what they have to say. Of course, we're all going to differ with what we do and say.
Absolutely.
As I explained to you, I used to be a Teamster. Pretty much the Republican mantra is they don't like unions. Well, I'm for unions, okay? That's the bottom line. I was a Teamster. I was a warehouseman. I worked in horrible working conditions, mixing acid. I know the need for protections on the job. I lived in lower income neighborhoods all through New York. I went through lower income schools. I went to a lower income college. I went to City College, okay? You know, I'm not black. I don't try to be black. I am a white man. But the thing is, though, is that most of the people that I grew up around, most of my friends, they were not white. If you take a look at my school photo that I have from college, there's one Greek fellow in the photo, and everybody else is African American on my wrestling team. Every team that I was on, they were all African American or Hispanic, okay, Latino, Puerto Ricans. So I've grown up with this diversity. I don't have the strict Republican conservative issues that typical Republicans have. Yes, I am a Republican, but I'm open to different viewpoints. I've had different life experiences than most people. As I said, I'm not wealthy. I'm just a middle-class guy, okay? I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy how I live my life, and I know where I'm going. And I believe that with what I could do, I could actually make a positive change for people in Nevada of all races, all colors. And that's my goal, is to make Nevada a better place for everybody. Taxes, they affect everybody. Taxes have no race. They have nothing to do with anybody, okay? Police issues. I can't even tell you how many times in New York City I was thrown up against a wall by a police officer, okay? Because I'm in a black neighborhood and I'm a white guy. That's where I'm living, okay?
We lost you again. We lost you. Okay.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I'm here.
I've gotten unjust traffic tickets, okay? What I look at is those things are life experiences that made me a better person. And I didn't become anti-police. I became a police officer. And I taught my officers to do better. And that's what I believe, that police officers every day of the week can do better. And that includes, you know, systematic racism on police departments. Let's get rid of it. We can do better. And then, of course, then, as I said, schools. I know you disagree with me about school choice. You disagree about ESAs. But unfortunately, people have been putting solutions out there to make it better, and it's never gotten better. Throwing money at these schools and throwing money at teachers, it just seems as though it's perpetuating the teachers' union, and the students are still in the same spot. And they've been in the same spot for the last 15, 20 years. We have to try something different. And that's for the children, that's for the schools. And that's my opinion when it comes to things. We have to try something a little bit different to make things better.
Okay. Hey, Tony, we're going to try to get your opponent to do his interview, and then we're going to try to get you all together to do a town hall discussion. I really want to thank you. I sent out some emails to all Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians in the state assembly, in the Senate, etc. You responded to me. So I give you a lot of props there, because when you reach out, you're trying to find out what's going on. Part of what I believe this time frame for all candidates are to find out what their constituents, what is it that their community wants, and determine if it's something that you can give them. And if you only run into the same crowd, you're going to hit the same answers. So you stepped out the box. So I'm going to give you an attaboy for stepping out the box and talking to me. There are many people who don't want to get out the box. They don't want to ask the tough questions. You answered them. You answered them respectfully. I hope you feel that I responded respectfully. We should agree to disagree sometimes. We should state what our opinions are, because you will never find the answer if nobody talks the truth. So I thank you very much on that, Tony. We are the Independent Black Voters on Facebook. This is a series of interviews, get to know the candidates. We will attempt to vet as many candidates as possible so that you will know what is best for your community. Tony, take it home by giving me your contact information, and then we will, again, do this again before the election day. Go ahead.
Okay,
can you hear me?
Okay. I blanked out for a second. Okay, so anyway, my name is Tony Palmer. I'm running for Assembly District 7. You could go to my Facebook page under Tony Palmer. I put my entire past history in there, my entire life, which a lot of people don't do. I'm out of the box, okay? I am who I am. I believe in working for the people. My website is palmerforassembly.com. That's PALMERFOR assembly.com. And just like Brian would tell you, my telephone number is 702-482-8096. I respond to everybody. I return calls. I return emails. Sometimes it's not as quick as I would like because I sometimes have events, but I put myself out there. I'll put myself on the line. I believe in what I believe in. I'm always open to different points of views. I don't know everything. I'm 62. I've been wrong a time or two in my life, but I am open to change, okay? And I do listen and value to other people's opinions. If you'd like to give me a call for anything, have at it.
Okay, I think we lost you again. All right, folks, we're going to finish this up. This is the Independent Black Voters on Facebook. Our vote is not free. We thank you again, Tony. Tune in as we continue to do.
First thing in the morning, if you send me a message.
Okay, thank you. We're going to end it. The Independent Black Voters on Facebook. Thank you, Tony. Our vote is not free. When we take the time to be informed voters, we vote for the right people. When we know what our issues are and we demand they be discussed, we get the right results. If you don't vote, you have no voice. If you don't vote, it is your fault. But if you vote, you are fully engaged. If you know and are educated on what you want and you vote for those that will provide the best opportunity for your agenda, we all win. This is the Independent Black Voters signing off. Thank you again, Tony.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay.